not slaves, and they're causing so much trouble that Elizabeth just said, all right, we're going to expel the black people from Britain. They're causing so much trouble that Elizabeth expelled the Africans from Britain. And so Lincoln was probably thinking, well, we're going to free the slaves, then we'll send them back to Africa, or maybe we'll set up an all-black country in Mississippi or something. And once we get rid of slavery, maybe not right away, but like over maybe 20 years or so, that'll weaken the power of the Democrats. All right, because remember, slaves at the time were counted as 3/5 of a person, and they voted the way their white slave masters voted. So they provided a lot of power for the Democrats in the South. And so once you take away the slaves, well, not only you take away a lot of votes, but you also take away slavery as an issue. So getting rid of slavery is just going to absolutely destroy the Democrat Party. And so Lincoln had all the self-interest in the world to say we're going to abolish slavery in the South. But of course, Lincoln didn't care about his fellow man. I mean, maybe he said, like in his speech, he's like, oh, it's about freedom of the fellow man. We can't have a portion of Americans enslaved. Blah 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 blah. Completely changed his tune once it looked like he was going to win the war. And so then another piece of evidence that Lincoln was completely disingenuous on his love for the Negro man and his ideals of equality is that he set up I don't know if it was Lincoln, but obviously Lincoln supported setting up of the colony of Liberia in Western Africa, which was to be where they were going to send them all back. Maybe they were going to, or maybe they would expand it once once they sent a bunch of them back and it became something of a success, they'd send more back, and then they'd expand Liberia to maybe eventually control the entire Guinean coast or something like that. But whatever. Anyway. So that's how I see the Civil War. Don't really know how to end this. Then came Reconstruction, and the Reconstruction was just such a the Reconstruction of the Southern states was just such a colossal state fascist mercantilist boondoggle that it put a bad taste in the mouth of Americans for years to come, and led the way to trust busting and the fear of monopolies and the fear of big business and all that crap, all that nonsense came. I don't know if I would singularly point out the Reconstruction period as the reason for it, although it certainly didn't help. It certainly didn't help Americans' perception toward big business, and so of course you ended up with the Progressive Era. You ended up with trust busting, and you ended up with government contracts, and you ended up exacerbating the problem because people didn't recognize that the problem didn't come from big business itself. It came from unaccountable work done because it's government work. You're working for government contracts, and because you're working for government contracts, you really don't have to do a whole lot. It's government work, right? Good enough for government work, right? And so that's why there was so much corruption, and that's why it was so bad. But of course, people didn't see that, and so they blamed the big business itself. And so that's another legacy of the Civil War. Another legacy of the Civil War was that states are no longer allowed to secede from the Union. Yep, that's the legacy of the Civil War. That's the legacy of Lincoln. Did it have anything to do with slavery? Not in the slightest. The freeing of the slaves was kind of a unintended consequence, and freeing the slaves had nothing to do with Lincoln just loving the slaves. Because if he loved the slaves so much, if he really was an idealist, then why did he agree earlier on to a constitutional amendment that would permanently allow slavery in the southern states? Well, the answer is quite simple. If once you just start going by the evidence and stop thinking about what went on in government education camps, it's simply because Lincoln was an opportunist, right? So yeah, that's it. And even the end of slavery itself, you know, it's like you don't change the facts on the ground by passing a law, right? So, in the South, you had Southerners basically viewing Africans as like less than human or less human than them, at least, or something like that. And so you have a culture that views these Africans like that, and you have a culture based on an economy based on the brutal exploitation of these people, and you have that for hundreds of years. And then all of a sudden you pass a law. You pass a law that says, all right, we're just going to stop doing this. All right, just stop it. Just stop it now. Just stop it. It's over now. Of course, what are you going to have happen? Well, what's going to happen is you're going to have all these people who are not integrated into the economy in any real way. They've just been slaves all this time. And so you have all these people running around, and a bunch of white people are like, holy shit, they're going to come after us now. And so they form, these anti-black protection groups like the KKK and all this stuff. And this is all a legacy of the retarded idea that you can just ban what happened. I mean, really, what should have happened, like sending all the Africans back to Africa or carving out like an all-black state in Mississippi. That's actually, I view that as like the most fair solution to the situation. Just carve out an area in the United States of an all-black country in the United States. That's a far more fair solution, and that would be the solution that I would put forward. But of course, after the war, things were just a hash, and so it kind of all just fell to pieces, and so you ended up with a bunch of ex-slaves running around. And you didn't do anything to change the culture, because you can't do anything to change the culture. Government can't do anything to change the culture. And so you didn't do anything to change the culture. You just had a whole bunch. You had all this racism, and you had these Africans who, were, faced a bunch of crap. So yeah, that's it. How long was this? Come on. Come on. Not too bad. Okay.